Welcome to the Throttle Stop Motorcycle Podcast. This is Matt. He has a very bad potty mouth. I'm going to wash out with soap later.
Morning, everyone. Hey, what's up, guys? How are y'all? Thanks for joining us today. Two of my favorite people. Matt's smiling already. We'll put him on the spot here in just a second. So,
It's the Matt and Matt show.
Matt and Matt. Yep. We'll be all right. We'll get it done.
Please on that side.
What's up?
Is it that Matt and Matt on that side?
Yeah.
See, I should have sat on that side, and then we could have introduced it as "Welcome to the Throttle Stop Podcast Between Two Matts," kind of like Zach Galifianakis between two ferns.
Between two ferns.
Is that a Matt sandwich then?
I don't know about this. I don't like where this is going.
He had Clinton on there saying, like, you look like a space librarian.
So, yeah, like I said, two of my favorite people, Matt and Terri Lynn, and this will be fun. Matt's going to introduce Terri, and Terry's going to introduce Matt. Go.
This is Terri Lynn. She's pretty much a boss. She's worked for a lot of awesome companies within the industry, including Triumph, KTM. Now she's at Troy Lee Designs, and I get to, I married this beautiful individual, so I get to claim her as mine. We have a wonderful daughter together. Not only is she awesome within the motorcycle industry, she's awesome outside of the industry, loves being outdoors.
The daughter or Terry?
Terry.
Okay.
The daughter's pretty awesome too. It's like a mini version of Terry.
Yeah, she is.
Loves being outside on anything with two wheels or exploring nature.
Nice.
Did that?
Yeah.
We get it?
That was a very safe introduction.
It was.
Like,
Okay.
you could
Thought you were
sleep
getting in trouble.
in the room
I think you
tonight.
did really
That's
good, Matt.
because he knows I get to go next.
Yeah. All right, Terry, your turn.
Yeah,
make me blush.
absolutely. I'll see what I can do. Gosh, the first time I knew of Matt, it was because I was a road race fan and I love to watch AMA Superbike. So my introduction to Matt was when he was racing for Corona Honda, although his racing career started much earlier than that.
In the 90s.
No,
No.
not the 90s.
He's not that old.
I'm not that. I'm old, but I'm not
I
that
didn't
old.
think Corona sponsored Honda that long.
They did.
Okay.
The Corona Extra Honda. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so our first introduction actually was in early 2008. At that point in time, I was working for a helmet company, and I made some funny little joke about his helmet size because he had a red mohawk.
Yeah.
I don't know, funny story there. But nonetheless, Matt is now working at Pierre New Mobility, which you guys know is a division of the KTM North America group, and he is the field service rep for the U.S.
For bicycles. Yeah.
Yes, for the e-bikes.
What Matt didn't say is that Terry here works for Troy Lee. And I know that this partnership doesn't work anymore because Troy Lee has gone ways with Ducati.
Red.
It's still red. And this is more about them because he's working more on like the GasGas bicycle side. She works on the Troy Lee side, which we talked earlier. It's not just GasGas bicycles you do. It's the whole group of them.
Yeah, which is kind of morphed a little bit because now Felt is peeled off into their own, I don't want to say entity because they're still they're like our cousin now as opposed to our sibling. So I work primarily with Husqvarna and GasGas e-bikes, yep, and the dealers and help support them and technical troubleshoot and take care of any kind of issues that they have. So,
So when I've got an issue on a bicycle, I circumvent everybody else and just call Matt.
that's
helps
how
to
it
know
works.
people.
I think that happens a lot, actually. His
Yeah, I'm
phone
sure I'm not
rings
the only
majority
one.
of the day.
Yeah.
Well, that's what people have a tendency to do. Like, when Matt introduces them to people, next time they go to buy a bike, introduce yourself to people.
That's true.
They go to Matt and it's like, you're not going to get as good of a customer experience dealing with the guy who's dealing with 15 other things. So we always try to like direct back to salesmen because like they're the ones who like it's their full-time job to focus on that customer.
Well, then, you're going to get a lot better deal from somebody other than me.
You have all the KPIs in mind.
I'm not the right guy to come to for a deal because I see all the bills.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So
Obviously, you were in the motorsports world because of racing super bikes.
Yep.
Were you racing super bike or were you racing super sport?
Yeah, I started just like most people doing motocross and stuff just locally, and then we actually had some friends where I grew up in Canton, Georgia. It was the Suzuki of Canton, Yamaha of Canton shop. Rob Palmieri and Mark Edwards and those guys there kind of got me into road racing. Mark owned the team was it Pennzoil, Team Extreme Pennzoil at the time, endurance team. And then they kind of transitioned into Team Extreme Maxxis, and they did a lot of the Wera endurance racing stuff. And so they got me into road racing. They said, hey, the dirt's for planting potatoes. You should come try road racing. And so at the time, I have a twin brother, and at the time we were both motocross racing, and he kind of had gotten beat up a little bit. He had a couple crashes, and he was into, I think he broke his finger or his collarbone one time, and he was super into playing guitar. Musically way more gifted than me. And so he was kind of like, hey, I want to stop motocross racing, and that kind of opened the door for some road racing because the costs go up with that stuff and all that. And my dad at the time trying to pay for both of us. So
did you injure yourself more on the motocross track or on the tarmac?
Man, I crashed a lot on the tarmac, but I'd say as far as injuries, probably more motocrossing. Yeah. I probably had more shoulder injuries road racing just from that type of stuff. But yeah, so that's kind of what got us into it, was that. And then I had a little GS 500 that we got from Matt Kramer at Blaze Cycle Works back in the day. He had like
I had one of those.
Yeah, it's like a, he would buy stuff and fix it and then sell it if it was salvaged or whatever. And so I guess like a motorcycle salvage deal is kind of what he did. And he'd sell parts and all that. And so we bought a GS 500 that was pretty beat up and just started working on it and, did the typical stuff. And my dad's a metal fabricator. So we had some little one-off stuff. Like he made some rear sets for it. We made an under the tail exhaust for it. It had a TZ 250 tail section. And so he made this custom like under the seat exhaust for it. And then
racing on a GS 500.
Yeah. GS 500 was the first, that was like the gateway, and it was right as the SV 650 was coming in. So it was totally not competitive.
Right.
But it got me into it. I think like one of my first race days, I promptly blew the engine up at Talladega GP.
And then,
and then we actually ended up driving back to the house. Which is probably 4 hour, 2.5, probably like 3 hours away. We drove back to our house, put a new motor in the bike, and then drove back out to the track the next day. And I ended up racing and did a couple races out there. That was one of my first kind of events, was at Talladega. But yeah, so that got me into it. And then I got an inline 4 from Matt at Blaze Cycle Works and GSXR 600. And then I don't know, it just naturally clicked for me, road racing. I felt like there was so much traction out on the track, like compared to motocross, where you're fighting to find traction, And so it was like, wow, there's this whole track, and it's got consistent at the time, consistent traction, but you figure out as you go faster that it's not so consistent.
Find the limits of it, because you're riding at the limits of it all the time. So you end up with so this sport bike riding background where you're doing a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
So you won the 600s. Did you ever go to the 1000 class or? Yeah.
So I won a bunch of championships for doing Wera my novice year. And Mike Embry at Team Embry Motorsports, like Jeff May and Brian Stokes had ridden for him, but they were on the superbike level, and he kind of wanted to come back down and bring, do something in the amateur, so to speak. So he happened to be at the GNF, and I had done pretty well. And so he approached us. And I would say Mike was kind of the first person that I ever signed a contract with. Basically gave us the equipment and a fuel card, and then everything else was on us. But yeah, so we had some good sponsorship at the time, and we had kind of met Brian Dreber, who used to do a lot of the announcing for the Superbike series at that time, whenever it was Speed Vision. And so he helped kind of connect some of the dots with some sponsors and stuff. And he was always around helping. It was kind of like the Speed Vision thing. It kind of slowed down for him because they brought new people into the booth. But he was always a big part of our program, just helping out, whether it was wiping tires or, getting stuff done. So
I miss Speed Vision.
Yeah. That was
it was
past, right?
Speed Vision to Speed.
Yep.
And then I guess Fox Sports took over as Fox Sports 1 or whatever.
Yeah.
But man, I missed that. So anyway, during this time you meet Terri.
Yeah. Well, so some years later, if we
probably
fast
2006.
Yeah,
right?
that was like 2000. That was actually 2004. And so I raced for Team Embry for 2004 and 5. 2005 was like we did all the AMA kind of the national series, the Superbike series.
Yeah.
And then so I don't know when that magazine article came out, but there was there was a magazine article that came out on Terri some year, it might have been the next year or something. Anyways, 2007, I raced for Geraldo Ferracci on MV Agusta. And then in 2008, I raced for Corona Honda. And so,
By Ferracci.
yeah. And so that's whenever Terri and I met, was at Tooele, Utah at Miller Motorsports Park for the first time we met, but we weren't like, I don't know, we just met each other through Melissa.
She was concerned that your mohawk wouldn't fit under your helmet.
Yeah. And that was her
Yes.
opening
I
line.
just can't imagine this guy, professional looking, like, I won't say clean cut. Obviously, you still have the beard, but like, I can't imagine the red mohawk.
Yeah, it was that was more than 20 years ago
got any
or 20 years
pictures?
ago. Yeah, we have a picture
For sure,
somewhere.
we could share
We'll
that.
have to come up with some pictures. Yeah, and you said Melissa Paris.
Melissa Paris, yeah, Melissa
Yeah.
Paris Hayes. So Josh and Melissa kind of introduced us, and then it was a couple rounds later. But yeah, so the ramp to 1,000 cc's, because Mike from at Embry wanted to go race thousands, and I had been on 600s as a novice, and then kind of transitioned. He had thousands, and that's what he wanted to race.
Yeah.
So we were going to go race AMA the next year on thousands, and it was a steep learning curve. It was like I went from 600s to thousands. I loved it. It was fun.
What
like
year are we talking about here?
this would have been 04, 05.
Okay.
Like,
you're
so
pre-traction
05
control, or
Yeah.
it's just starting to get involved probably with some of the
Mhm.
bikes.
It was super. Like there was that one year at Barber Motorsports Park. I think it was 06.
Mhm.
Everybody could tell what was going on, but the AMA didn't know how to find it. Like you could
Yeah.
hear Malad and Spies, you could hear them actually, Yosh ramping up with the traction control. You could hear it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like a lot of the other teams didn't have it. We certainly didn't have it. I learned how to, your traction control was right here and your slipper clutch was right here. And that was
remember
kind of how I
going
learned.
to Indianapolis for their inaugural GP. Whenever I think that was either like 2007 or 8. But I remember seeing Nicky Hayden going around a corner and him just grabbing everything it had,
Mm-hmm.
and you just see the back start to slide, and you'd hear pop. You go whop whop.
Yeah.
As they're going around.
really
the
leaning on like electronics then, and
Yeah.
the electronics were really rudimentary, so the bike sounded broken all the time.
Yeah.
especially a GP bike, and I think what y'all were hearing was just the ignition interrupting up
It
out of
was,
the corners, and the thing
It was
popping
crazy.
cracking.
And so like 07, I had traction control on the MV, and we actually I ended up turning it off most of the time. And then whenever I raced for Corona Honda, we had some HRC stuff that worked so poorly. It was really bad. Like I ended up turning it off most of the time too, because there was some issues. I went and did a couple World Superbike rounds for a Honda team, filled in for them, and it was the same. They had some HRC electronics, and it was the same thing. It was but like water got into it. One of the at Donington,
Oh, no.
and the bike was so dangerous to ride. Like you'd be going down the front straightaway, and I'd be wide open, and 1 minute it would be ripping, the next minute it would just fall flat on its nose, and then it was just like this constant huckabuck.
Yeah.
I ended up just pulling out of one of the qualifying sessions because it was so bad.
Back then, you really didn't have the lean angle sensitive stuff. You just had it where if the rear wheel went faster than the front,
Yeah.
it knew you were sliding, so it'd cut the ignition. And so that's
Yeah.
the pop you're hearing.
I think, yeah, and to my knowledge, there's probably other people that have way more intel because they worked at these teams, but it was like for the AMA Superbike stuff, it seemed like Yosh was way ahead of everybody.
Mhm.
I mean, you could hear it, you could see it, they probably had some stuff. I mean, I rode with a kit.
We're actually using it to
Yeah.
race, and
Yeah.
you don't see that a lot in earlier days of traction control. Or if they did have any levels, they'd turn it down to level 1 and just use it very minimally.
Yeah,
Crazy is now it's like stock on customer
yeah,
off the showroom floor
I go out
better than
here-
what you were racing
control
with.
and
Yeah.
all kinds of crazy
I go out
stuff.
here and look at it, and I'm like, dude, it's like an Xbox controller up on the
Yeah.
thing. So
And I think Shamira back then was looking at like spikes in RPM, but you couldn't have wheel speed sensors on them back then because the traction control wasn't legal.
Think-
So
Oh, okay.
they were looking at just like the new dirt bikes do, because they're
Yeah.
they had to have been working off crankshaft countershaft speed. I don't know, something. They had some stuff going on that was working. I rode with a kit box that I had gotten secondhand for a super stock bike. And the guy that gave it to me was like, look, it's going to feel weird, but just go in there and start and like grab more throttle than your normal pickup points, and you'll go faster. Like if you ride it a little more like against what your mind is telling you, like a little more sloppy, it's going to go faster. And it for sure worked. Like you could go in and pick up the throttle earlier than I would with my stock ECU, and it would drive a little bit, but it wouldn't like, you didn't have to worry about just totally flicking yourself off. So
just like we talked about whenever my dad was on the podcast, we go all the way back. My grandfather was raising and lowering float level depending on where he was on the track.
Yeah.
And like progressively we get the motorcycles get better and better, and the rider has to do less and less. And so you're depending on the electronics in that situation to not just slide everywhere.
Yeah. I always call it the ghost in the machine. That's what it feels like. You're just depending upon that little ghost in the machine to keep you safe.
Yeah.
What's interesting, we talk about our daughter. You mentioned our daughter earlier. Like she's growing up in this completely different age and era of learning to ride. She started on an electric, Stasic actually, and so now the equipment that comes off the showroom floor for riders of this generation, it's so crazy. It's completely different feel, different everything. It's interesting to just think through that and what the future of our industry is going to look like.
I looked at the video that was 44 Teeth, I believe it was, that was doing a review on the SXE5 whenever it first launched. And the kid that was riding it had an SX50 and rode both of them back to back. And, their lap times were fairly comparable. I don't remember which one won, but it wasn't a major advantage. But he said he preferred riding the electric because he didn't have to worry about where he was in the RPM range.
Yeah.
Wow.
The power, there was no meat of the power. It's just dependent on where your throttle position is on the hand.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. Like it's a totally different mindset going into it. Cause whenever I was on 85s, when I got my first, 85, it was, they called me bog zap shift because every time that I would, every time I'd actually get into the meat of the power on the pipe, I'd shift because I was scared of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, so you're racing for a long time.
Yep.
So as you get out of racing into the professional world, where did you go?
Where did I go? Man, that's like one of those things where you're transitioning from something that I loved racing. It was like, that was a dream as a kid. That's what I wanted to do, was race motorcycles. And I got paid a little bit, enough to pay my bills at the time. Yeah. But, I got to experience that probably while everybody else was going to college and being, getting their degrees. I was racing and having fun and traveling. So I got to see a lot of the country. I wouldn't trade any of that because it was great experience. But then Terri and I met in 2008, and then I proposed to her in 2009. And then we got married in 2010. So 2009, so like the global housing crisis, like the financial crisis or whatever happened in 2008, it was percolating 2007, 2008. And then 2009, that's whenever the slack came out of the rope for racing. So I went and bought whoever was paying the best contingency, which happened to be Kawasaki. I bought 3 motorcycles and then went around and chased contingency money. And she was my crew chief. That's how I should have introduced you, as my crew chief. Yeah. So in 2009, in
racing and life, right?
Yeah, in racing and life for sure. So I just went and chased contingency money. And then it was like after that was done, because Kawasaki, pulled all their contingency back for the following year to 2010. It was like, all right, I got to get a real job. So I kind of went and worked with my dad a little bit at his metal fabrication shop. Yeah. Did that. And then
you got a real job.
And then I got a real job doing that. I've always kind of been in and out of there, like as it's needed. I also
between races when you need the money.
Yeah. And then, for sure. Between races. And then I did some suspension work with the guy at the time who was doing my suspension, Thermos Man. Like I would just help rebuild some forks here and there to make money. But then it was like, okay, it's time to like have a real job. I ended up starting out as an independent sales rep. I was carrying Troy Lee Designs, Leatt, Ozonic bicycle products, CD boots. I had like a small line because the independent rep for those he had vacated. So that's kind of what got me into it. I'd kind of jokingly say I did what everybody does after they get done racing, like they go into sales or something, because that's, a lot of racers do go into
Hard to
sales.
get out of the industry once you've made all these contacts, as you do when you're racing. You're networking, because you're looking for sponsors constantly, and you're eventually whenever it's time to stop racing, you got to go somewhere. So you again hit up these contacts you've made as you've gone on throughout everything.
So I did that, and then the guy who was the Tucker Rocky distribution rep in the area, shortly after I'd started that, like he got to know me because I was in the shops and stuff, and so Larry Klein was his name, and he recommended me for his territory, so I worked for Tucker Rocky for about 3 years, and then just kind of rolled into some other. I worked for Alta Motors, electric dirt bikes.
Yep.
I was working for Alta Motors, so I worked for Stasic.
Halo around your leg.
So, yeah. That was from my Yamaha, not from an Alta. But so just kind of have been in the industry, and as Terri can say, she's.
Yeah, while you were still road racing simultaneously, I was getting ready to get out of the Marine Corps. Actually, I was in the Marine Corps for over 9 years as an aircraft engine mechanic. And during that time, though, I got introduced to kind of power sports motorcycle world on a recreational level. I grew up on a farm and ranch, and we always had ATV, UTV, so we could go fix fence. And there was little dirt bikes around, but they never ran. But I had some buddies when I was in the Marine Corps that would go out to the desert and what have you. And my buddy Ryan Stromboli, that was his nickname, but he said, if you can start it, you can ride it. And I'm like, well, what kind of challenge is that? So I started this big old Yamaha 426 and then proceeded to ride it around the Pee Wee track.
Those weren't easy to start.
No, it was terrible. But I did it.
That's why he said that, because he didn't think you could start it.
Yeah, for sure. He didn't think I'd start it. So anyways, it was, it kind of all started from there. Same as Matt, actually. I did some motocross racing out there in Southern California when I was stationed out there. And then randomly ended up doing a track day at California Speedway. And I actually also, like you, felt more comfortable out there. And a couple of the instructors were like, hey, you're pretty good at this. And I just enjoyed that piece of it. And so my first road race ever actually was at Roebling Road here in Georgia. I met some people and they invited me out and put me on a bike. And so that was 2002. Started road racing out in Southern California and mostly West Coast stuff. And I always say I accidentally crashed my way into the motorcycle industry because I had a pretty big wreck at Willow Springs. And unfortunately for the plan that I had to stay in the Marine Corps for 20 years, I ended up having to get out. But was working with Parts Unlimited Icon at the time to help develop the mil spec vest, which is, it's the vest that you wear to get on military bases. So I had some contacts there. Basically said to them, I have to get out of the Marine Corps due to my injuries. Is there anything that you guys, any contacts for me or any job openings? So I was able to step into the apparel space early on, and gosh, was doing that for a large majority of my career. So when Matt and I met in 2008, I was working for a helmet company at the time. So I kind of made my way back into apparel with my most recent move to Terri Lynn Designs after being at KTM North America. And as what?
You're at KTM North America as?
Oh, yeah. I was the national sales manager there for 2 years.
She didn't want to brag on herself.
No, I was going to say, no big deal. Just
no big
national sales.
Just national sales manager, in charge of KTM, who's far into GasGas.
Yeah.
Anything else? Were you in charge of bicycles at that time too?
Only at the very beginning. And then we ended up staffing up the entire bicycle side of that division. Right. But actually, during my time at KTM Group, I started in GasGas and Husqvarna, and I was your district sales manager at the time.
Yeah.
And did that role for 2 years and thoroughly enjoyed working with you guys. So you are also some of our favorite people. But when we were given the opportunity, or I was given the opportunity to step in the national sales manager role, that's when we picked up the family and moved to California. So we had that adventure for 2 years, and now we're back in Georgia. It was actually, we're right on the year mark of being back in Georgia. So a little over a year for me at Terri Lynn Designs, and KTM Pure No Mobility was accommodating so that Matt could do a remote position in his customer service role. So it's been great being back in the Southeast. There's so much stuff happening in the Southeast in terms of dual sport riding, just riding groups in general, and seeing people out on the road. And it's been fun.
I think ultimately, like, going out and doing those big things in California, it's really nice, it's really luxurious, but ultimately home is home.
Agreed.
And like I know that you want to be back in Blue Ridge, but yeah, I'm glad. So then you ended up with Troy Lee, allowed you to come back and be back home. And did you move into the same house? It wasn't that convenient, was it?
Not that convenient, but we sure wish we could have.
Yeah.
Gosh, the interest rate was way better 2
Yeah, it
years
was.
ago.
That's for sure.
Well, and you guys, I mean, we had talked about you guys renting that house while you were in California, and that you were in prior to moving out there. But
Yeah, but you don't make the move across the country when you're in a role
it's
with a short-term mindset.
right.
And Matt said it to me. We debated, are we going to move to California? Because we had such a nice network of friends and family close here in the Southeast. And Matt said, I'm not going to be the one that holds you back for your goal and this opportunity. And I was really excited and proud of the work that I had done. And obviously KTM, great organization, really performance mindset racing organization. It was a great opportunity for us. But at the end of the day, like you said, home is home. And so we made our way back. And when I started with Troy Lee Designs, actually they were private equity owned.
Okay.
And so one of the big advantages to me being on the East Coast and the way the organization was structured at the time, there was West Coast sales director, East Coast sales director. In June of last year, the West Coast sales director resigned. He had some health concerns and wanted to take a little less stressful role, which I completely understand. So I inherited at that point in time all of North America for the sales side of things on Troy Lee Designs. Then last year I would have said unfortunately, but now we will say fortunately, we were going through a change in ownership. So the private equity company out of Lyon, France, no longer wanted to build out the development of Troy Lee Design. So they basically walked away from us, and we had 48 hours to find a buyer for the company. And Troy himself did a lot of legwork, and he said, I don't want to see my brand go through this again. So he purchased it back. So now Troy's 100% owner, and it's really fun. It's a lot of work. We've completely changed the way the business is going to conduct itself in the market moving forward. But the reality is getting back to the roots, getting back to the community, getting back to supporting brick and mortar, because a lot of what I would say got broken during the COVID era was just that customer relationship and being in the community. And, we have all this ability to be connected through social media and text messages and podcasts and all of that stuff. But are we really part of a community if we don't get together and break bread and ride motorcycles and tell stories? So that's the part that is a core value of Troy Lee Designs. And that really resonates with me because on a smaller scale, that's really what we want to do in the Southeast in our local community is just get more people riding, whether it's, it doesn't matter to me if they're on a bicycle or if they're on a motorcycle, or I don't even discriminate if they're in a side by side. It's just coming together and being outside and being in this industry is so rejuvenating for me. And it's what brought our family together too.
I think we're seeing a bit of a resurgence of brick and mortar in the motorcycle industry. I mean, obviously, I feel like the online sales are necessary,
Mm-hmm.
like having a website, all of that. In the beginning, it wasn't. I used to, if there was a brand that was competing with me online, I wasn't going to sell that brand. Like, if you want to buy that brand, go buy that brand online.
Right.
Because it really does take some research on our part, some investment in the inventory, some research into like some training on our side. So, and some support whenever there's a customer who bought a helmet from us and hey, the cheek pad fell out, whatever. So it wasn't worth my time to deal with somebody who was, going to take my helmet and put it in a Walmart.
Right.
So I think that we've seen a little bit more of that return. Obviously, just about every brand out there now has an online website. Like
Mhm.
At a certain point, I'm not going to win every customer, but it's another element to be able to come into the dealership, try it on, and just make sure it fits, make sure it works for you. Because I have brands of helmets like because of your head shape, I can't fit you in that helmet.
Right.
So it's good to have that awareness as a dealership.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's like one of those, I feel like, what do they call that? Like a self-fulfilling prophecy or something. If you don't stock it because you're competing against it, but the customers want it, in a way, it's kind of like they're coming in looking for it, but maybe you don't have it because they're selling it online.
You better
So
have
in
a
a way,
product or
yeah.
have an alternative that's, going to match quality and all that.
Because I think of my own purchase habits, and it's like, if I want something, I'm going to go to the brick and mortar first because it's, and I mean, I'm not like everybody out there. I recognize that, but I will go to the brick and mortar and support that. Like, we both prefer to support the brick and mortar more or less. But if they don't have it, then it's like I'm forced to go here to go get it.
I went to Home Depot just a couple weeks ago to grab these little caster wheels. I could get them online for $15. I paid $30 because I wanted them today.
That's the thing. It's a little bit of that instant gratification.
Right now. Yeah.
I'm working on this project right now. I don't want to wait.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of projects, obviously you two are super motivated. And Terri, you kind of mentioned kind of getting back to the roots and maybe the grassroots of things.
Yeah.
And so y'all have got a little project that you started.
Absolutely.
Cherry Log Adventures. So what's up with that?
Well, it's really just leaning into supporting a community that's supporting us, I guess. So BDR, Backcountry Discovery Routes, is creating these phenomenal routes all over the country. And right as we moved home, there was the talk of the BDRX, the Chattahoochee BDRX. It literally is 2 miles from our doorstep. And so, first of all, from a selfish perspective, I'm like, wow, so exciting to be able to be here and kind of ride on it whenever we want. But then putting myself in a rider's shoes that's maybe not from here. So I've ridden a lot in other areas of the country, and it's like you get a flat tire or you run out of gas or you make a bad corner and end up in the ditch. Like, who do you call? And so we've created something where we're accessible. We're right there. So if somebody needs, to be picked up on the trail, needs a tube delivered, maybe they even need a bike. So it just started, super infancy, but we really want to be a resource for those riders because I think the farthest point of the Chattahoochee BDRX is maybe 3 hours from us. So we just want to offer our support of that community and see it grow. And also for our local economy, it's nice because the Backcountry Discovery Routes does a lot to highlight local small businesses, local restaurants, just kind of gems within the community. And we live there because we love it and we want more people to know about it. So
I just saw on Facebook where somebody was they were, I think, from Florida, and they were looking for somewhere to park, asking on Facebook where to park safely. And you jumped on there and you're like, call me. And I don't know if you did or not, but
it was a big truck.
Oh, yes.
It was basically a
tractor trailer.
It was a tractor trailer.
Oh, it was
like,
him
that's
and a bunch of his friends.
Yeah.
But we did get him squared away.
Okay.
Mulberry Gap. He ended up parking there. So
which Kate, and help me out, I'm drawing a blank. Andrew, thank you. They were bicycle centric for years. Really cool. Not really a bed and breakfast, but cabins, but they did serve breakfast and lunch, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had a bicycle shop, and now they're kind of
little breakfast. That's nice.
Yeah. Well, they've got like a barn, for like a better term, right? That's kind of a common area, and that's where they serve meals. And they were the TNG
TNGA
goes through there. They do a bunch with that, but now they're transitioning. Obviously, the bicycle stuff is staying.
Right.
But they're transitioning into the BDR and the adventure riding on the motorcycles, and which is really cool. And that's, that can't be too far from
No.
I think
you guys.
Yeah, I think Kate.
33 minutes door to door. I spend a lot of time over there with those guys.
I think they would see some of the motorcycles come over there, and they had some questions, and it's like I actually worked over there for a little bit in between jobs. Like whenever we first moved up there, I was helping those guys out, and I would ride my motorcycle over there. And I think Kate kind of started asking me a little bit about stuff, and I was like, yeah, we basically ride. There's so much riding in North Georgia and Tennessee, and you can get to a lot of things from around here. And it's similar to gravel. It's similar to their bike packing stuff they were doing, only you're covering more ground. So they're actually, getting interested in motorcycles and shopping for motorcycles and shopping for gear and collecting stuff and trying to, get on the motorcycle wagon. So
serve that community.
Yeah, serve that community. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
I think that's a general theme. When I look, there's an awful lot of talk about what happened during COVID and how do we recover from COVID, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I really like the thought process of looking forward. And so Kate and Andrew have done that a lot. So Mulberry Gap is a really nice microcosm of maybe what the greater industry, two-wheel industry could do is adapt and move forward, because they somewhat inherited that business from their parents, and it really was bicycle focused at the beginning. Then they got into ultra running, and now they see this opportunity with the BDR being there and off-road motorcycles. And so moving forward, it's like, how do we keep people engaged in the outdoor? How do we keep our riding areas and hiking areas and biking areas so that they're accessible to everyone, and we can cohabitate and they're taken care of? And, we follow a couple of different social media platforms, but one specifically is what's going on out in Moab, where the government's trying to shut down some of these places that are so iconic.
Yeah.
Colorado Trail Alliance is another one. I have the opportunity in September to go speak at the Colorado 600, and that's keeping their trails so we can ride. And so it's really important, I think, not only as leaders in the industry, but also just customers and riders. We need to help fight for that so that we can have this as our businesses moving forward.
For sure. I think, and it was interesting. We went to the BDR launch for the Southeast BDR, which was super cool. I've never done anything like that. So it was cool just to see, other people in the industry. I mean, I kind of like to just stay up on my mountain in my shop and just, jump on the motorcycle and go ride. So it was cool to kind of mingle. And we saw Paul Wright from KTM World down there, and just, other people. And it was, but one of the lines that they said that kind of like rung true with me was their mission is to open these BDRs and continue to support these businesses and continue to support the stuff, because the more people that we have riding on these Forest Service roads and going out and riding these trails, the more users there are, then they're going to keep those trails open. There's not if we see more use of them, then there's the chance of them closing them down becomes a smaller. I don't want to say smaller, but it does become like we're seeing more useful impact of people actually the money following all of it and everything. So
the risk there is, like, if you have more people on it, there's more chance for someone to go out there and be stupid, right?
That's true.
And as long as we make it worth the while, talking about the BDR, make it worth the while of the communities around, they'll recognize that that's just one idiot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, that could be said.
I mean, look at Bill's Gap, right? I mean, look at what it's kind of turned into, what it absolutely has.
There's no reason to go out there.
I mean, I think the critical part to keeping these areas open is all the different groups cohabitating nicely and playing nicely together, whether it be the runners or the guys on the gravel bikes, the guys on the motorcycles, the folks on horses. It kind of goes back to the ski resorts when snowboards first came along, right? And all the skiers hated the snowboarders, and like it took years and years and years to get past that, or somebody surfing in somebody's, on somebody's beach or whatever. And like, we've all got to get along. And that's where all these advocacy groups are important. Locally, we've got Sorba. We've got Wild Trails on the running side. I don't know, maybe I should, but I'm sure there's a equestrian group
sure there is
around here. And
it's interesting you say that, because like I would say, like yourself, Terry, Jeff, I'm not sure, like your extracurriculars, but like we all you spend time riding bicycles. You ride bicycles, you run, you hike, you ride bicycles, you ride motorcycles. I ride bicycles, I ride motorcycles. And so there's a lot of commonality between the user groups, but sometimes it can get met with some resistance, and it's like, to your point, we should all kind of work together, because at the end of the day, the people riding horses are out there for the same reasons that I'm out there on my motorcycle. It's to enjoy being out. Like, I'm, I don't want anything to do with horses.
No, they got a mind of their own.
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather be on my motorcycle, but I'm I think it comes to your point, like the respect side of things, like on motorcycles, we do know some people that don't like bicycles. They'll see gravel bikes out there, they'll see these types of users, and it's just being respectful of those people. Slow down a little bit. Don't roost them. Same thing with horses. Like I always turn my motorcycle off whenever I see horses, wait for them to say, hey, it's all good. It's just, comes down to just like kind of putting yourself in that person's position, I think, and treating them like if you were on a bicycle or you were hiking or you were on a horse.
It's like a metaphor for life, though.
It is,
honestly.
but I mean, to
Yeah.
Jeff's
Yeah.
point, there's like people that are always just kind of those people that don't. Those are the bad apples that could ruin it for everybody.
There's always going to be the bicycle rider who hates the motorcyclist passing by them, or the motorcyclist that hates that the bicyclist is in their way. And it also, the bicyclists have a point where they're saying like the guys on the motorcycles are running up the trails and things like that. We have to realize that trail maintenance is everybody's responsibility.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not something that you can just go out there and tear up and just leave for the next person. I think we've all ridden in a trail that's just like completely rutted up. The rain ruts have started to come in, and it gets to a point where it's even unrideable on a motorcycle.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get it when a bicyclist gets upset if they've seen that kind of situation.
Yeah.
But as long as we, keep in mind that this is everybody's responsibility, then, can move forward and get along.
But from the motorcyclist point of view, and I get it because I'm both. The guy that doesn't ride bicycles, doesn't pedal, feels like, the guy on the bicycle's got all these areas that are bicycle only. Why doesn't he, why do I have to fight this, right? Why doesn't he go there and ride so I can ride my motorcycle here and not have this conflict?
Locally,
I guess.
look at Edwards Point.
Yeah.
Edwards Point was a place that was built by motorcyclists.
Right.
Like, we talk about Hunter. Hunter went out there and he helped cut some of the trails. We have Whitmire's up there that own part of the land.
Oh yeah.
And now they're not able to ride on the trails that they built because bicyclists came in. They enjoyed riding out there.
They had user conflicts.
And ultimately, government recognizes the bicyclists weren't the ones that were doing the harm. And that's, again, if you want to maintain your right to be on a trail, you got to take some responsibility in maintaining it as well.
And that's why I say that it's critical for everybody, to get along and work together and figure out how to meet the common goal and understand that you can't go ride everywhere on everything or go, necessarily, you can't go hike on a downhill, one of the dedicated downhills at Walden's Ridge here locally, right? There's bicycles coming off the mountain.
You better be fast for
30 mile an hour at head height because they're that far in the air. So yeah, I mean, it's just respecting each other and just like here you said, anything in life, right?
Yeah, but I think that's where it comes full circle and bringing it back to brick and mortar dealers. You guys sell both. You guys talk about both. You recreate in both. This is now an opportunity to speak to your customers of, hey, we're gonna bring the group together and work on this trail, on this date, be there if you can. And so I think as stewards of all the aspects of recreating on two wheels, that's somewhat of our responsibility to be the thought leaders of how we're going to do that. And, the Motorcycle Industry Council does a really good job fighting for us in DC. And I think they do work for us that we don't even know they're doing. But if they weren't doing it, we'd certainly understand that.
Yeah.
People for Bikes does a lot for the same thing, cycling industry. Again, if they weren't doing it, we'd notice, but they're taking care of things that just make us happy and we're just plugging along. And so sharing that information back with our consumers is super important. And I think at the end of the day, that's for Cherry Log Adventures. That's kind of what I want to do on a smaller scale is just open the eyes of the opportunity and have some shared experiences and get more kids riding motorcycles and bicycles, make it more accessible to women. I feel like little by little, we're growing the female ridership in both motorcycles and bicycles. Bicycles has happened faster. Motorcycles is a little bit slower, but to me, it's like, man, I just want more girls to ride with. I can't always keep up with this guy unless he's in a incredibly patient mood. So,
well, it's kind of interesting now that you say, did you kind of put that on with the whole Cherry Log ADV thing? Is like, because you've been doing that. Like whenever we went to Blue Ridge, you started the Pedal Pixies thing.
I did.
And so it was like they had this was like right around COVID. Like
it was entering into COVID.
And so we had been involved with
Little
Bella's down in Canton. And so then they started like an outdoor meetup of the Pedal Pixies. And that was like the stuff in Ellijay and Blue Ridge and kind of the mountain bike trails there where you get little girls, out with fairy wings on, riding the trails, doing their thing. It was pretty
so
cool.
awesome.
It was super cool.
And terrifying because the first day, 27 little girls showed up. And I thought, oh, snap, how am I going to manage this? Fortunately, a lot of the moms were mountain bikers, so it was helpful. Again, though, the moms that have kids that ride, of course, the kids are going to be involved in that. But there are a lot of kids out there that I think would be interested in it, but they just aren't accessible because, especially if it's like a single mom, she's not going to walk into a dealership and buy a motorcycle. I mean, she might. And if she does, she's rad and I want to meet her. But the reality is, I think that barrier to entry is there. And so how can we make that more accessible? And there's a lot of foundations working on it. It's just, how do we amplify that and continue to do that in our individual communities? And it's a struggle.
Yeah.
And again, we try to be welcoming. I like to think that we are. We're probably not perfect, as good at it as I think we are sometimes, but I think there is a hesitation with maybe especially females, but not just females, just people in general, to walk into a motorcycle store or a bicycle store and they feel uneducated and they think everybody in there is a pro racer and like we're not. Like,
Yeah.
I would like to think that I am, but I'm definitely not. But yeah, I mean, I think the positive aspect to the brick and mortar stuff and Cherry Log Adventures and everything that you guys are doing is the welcoming aspect of just introducing new people to it potentially, and it being a friendly environment for them to walk into instead of just scary.
Right.
That's what I think a lot of people.
Part of that is what we're doing here.
Yeah.
Like, we find ourselves in a unique position where we're a motorcycle dealership that has been selling bicycles. Well, now we're starting this bicycle shop over here, and that's the set that we're in right now. We're in an active construction zone, by the way.
We should have hard hats.
Yeah,
But yeah, we got the GasGas bicycles behind us just to kind of make a foreground, or a background. And yeah, we're building out the bicycle shop because there's a lot of times where people just don't feel completely welcome walking into a motorcycle shop to buy a bicycle. You don't think about those being, paired together. But honestly, we're finding more and more that they're a gateway drug to each other.
100%.
It goes both
Couldn't
directions.
agree more.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
And I think there's challenges too. Matt will probably could speak more to this than I could, but during my time at KTM, when we first started selling, Husqvarna e-bikes was first. When I think about motorcycle dealerships, and you guys can chime in on this, it's like, what's the primary area of revenue generation? And during COVID, a lot of dealers were adding stuff to create more revenue because the primary avenue for creation of revenue was like low on stock. So let's add some more stuff. Well, now we're out of that and we're in a completely different market than we've ever been. You have bicycles and you have motorcycles. How are you differentiating yourself from all of those out there? And so you guys have the bicycle mavens within your store, yourself and Carla. You have the motorcycle mavens over on that side. And I think that speaks to the individual customer. It's creating that customer experience that is welcoming. And the idea of this premium brick and mortar and having a good buying experience, that's how you maintain those customers. And you guys for sure do that. You do events, you have this podcast. I mean, that's creating this community that's sustainable. There was this thing I read a long time ago. It was like, what's the value of your customer? And over the course of a lifetime of a customer, could be $500,000.
Right.
Especially if you have
We've
a
seen
motorcycle
that.
habit like the Lynn family, right? It's like,
Bicycle habit too.
yeah.
Things with two wheels in general.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, it's like the effort you put into it to create this community, to create the separate doors for the separate customer to make it accessible is so important to the future.
So me and you have lined up against each other.
Oh yeah,
On a few
I was
rows.
wondering if
Speaking
that
of
was gonna
professional racer.
come
So
up.
yeah,
And
funny,
we raced with each other.
that's what. Yeah, and well, the three of us have raced with each other.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
So at Perry Mountain 24-hour race, one of you two, I'm not sure who, put a team together. When Terri, you were with KTM Husky GasGas,
Correct.
Yep.
and yeah, we all raced together. You
My
found the-
toenail has never been the same.
no, so Terri went out on your first stint.
Yeah.
So 5 or 6 person team. I don't
It was-
remember.
I can't remember. Somebody backed out.
I think it was supposed to be 6 and it was 5.
Matt, Tim, Terry.
Yep.
Yeah, it might have been 5 of us.
Yeah. So I don't know. Terry, you went out like third stint, right? Everybody else, like 2 of us already done a hour and a half stint, whatever.
Yep.
And you found I think only muddy spot. Well, until Matt found all the muddy spots the next morning. But you found the only muddy spot on the whole 10-mile course or whatever it was. Got your gloves muddy, dropped the bike, got your gloves muddy during the crash, went to pick the bike up, handlebar slipped out of your hand,
dropped the bike
buster
on my toe,
fell on your toe, and you finished. What's that?
What kind of boots were you wearing?
Hey, let's not talk about
Yeah.
We gotta bring up old stuff.
So finished the lap and came down.
Looking for a boot sponsor.
Came down pit road and you're like, I think my toes messed up. And we're like, none of us knew what was going on at the time. And you took your boot off. Somebody else went out, and you took your boot off, and it looked like somebody had stepped on a grape. It was.
It was rough.
If I remember right, your toenails were painted.
Yep.
And you could see where it looked like the toenail had grown out, but it was definitely out, but it wasn't because it had grown out. Like there was a paint line,
it popped the end of
1/16 of an inch. Yeah, it was.
Did you do another stint after that? I can't remember if you went to go do another lap or if you.
No, I did not.
No, your toes.
I think she provided nutrition for the rest of us.
Yeah.
The rest of the race. Yeah.
You looked green whenever you came in, though.
Oh,
You
that
had your
hurt.
face.
That
Like you were
absolutely
like
hurt.
pretty sick to your stomach.
And I think the motorcycle was not set up because you did some changes to the bike after that.
It's Matt's
Yeah,
fault.
but you went back out.
I don't know. It was all
I
a
think
blur.
you did because I lowered the handlebars. Remember? You said you were fighting it. I feel like you went back out and did one more ride.
That was a demo motorcycle, by the way.
It was a demo.
And I had
That thing was
raced it.
never the same.
I
after that.
raced it at the Sandblast Rally, so we had it set up for that. And then very shortly after, then we went and did this, and it was just the wrong setup. I don't think I went back out. You went out, and
I just know
then
we had
lowered
these
the handlebars.
risers on there. So whenever you're, and I was like, this is insane. Like the handlebars feel like they're up here and I'm trying to turn through the woods.
Yeah. I do remember we pulled
The top triple clamp off,
Yeah, we-
slammed it down. We had to fudge some bolts because I
course, in
didn't have
24
everything.
hours, you've got all kinds of time to
Yeah.
do things like that.
Yeah.
But you, it started raining at probably.
I still feel bad about that, by the way. It was the the last session. And I
What,
think I
'cause
was
you
supposed to
just
take
made
an extra.
laps?
Yeah, I think I was supposed to take it like
It was
2
gross.
laps.
Don't
And I
feel
was
bad
like,
about that
and
at
I
all.
was like, I pulled in or whatever to get some fuel or whatever, and I was like, or I was just taking an extra lap or something, and I still feel bad about it.
No,
I'm
you
like,
shouldn't
oh,
feel
Matt's
bad.
missing the riding.
He's probably glad it was the
Yeah, so
demo
it-
motorcycle
like-
and not his.
Yeah, like 3:00 in the morning, it started raining on one of my stints, and like 3:00 in the morning, I'm never awake at 3:00 in the morning.
Most of us aren't.
And I'm never ever riding the motorcycle at 3:00 in the morning, except once a year at Perry Mountain. So it's always so weird. But there's that like area where it's like hard packed clay.
Yep.
And it started raining, and it was, I mean, like,
dude.
it was slick, and like the shadows at night are weird. And so anyway, fast forward 4 hours, and sun's coming up.
Yeah.
It's raining even harder. There's it looks like a bomb went off on every hillside.
Dude, it was so bad.
It looked like a bomb went off in the middle of the showroom. There's motorcycles on every hillside.
Oh, they're just laying like just
Oh
Yeah.
no.
everywhere.
And Matt, you made a very heroic ride and I was fine that you didn't pit in because I think you did like 3 or 4 laps.
Yeah, it was pretty rough though because it was that.
It was
To your point, it was raining so much that it was fine while it was raining because it was like kind of washing the mud off or whatever. You know, it was keeping it okay. And then it started, I think, it stopped raining and it started tacking up. And then it just got, whenever I got that bike back home, I took it blew it completely apart, had the wheels off. I was washing stuff and I was still finding like dirt in places. It was insane.
Yeah. That was the FE 350, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the S model. It was a street
Right,
model. It had a horn on it. The whole nine.
So funny story about the horn.
Did you use it?
Oh,
Matt uses the horn
I
in
use the
racing
horn a lot.
often.
So I don't remember where we were. I think it was a
We were in
sorts race.
Tennessee.
It may have been a GNC. I think it was a sorts race.
It was.
And
It was in Tennessee.
I guess we were on the same row. And
that was after. I know
That
what
was
you're
after
talking
Prairie
about. But
Mountain.
that was after Prairie Mountain. We had already we sold that bike.
oh, this is a different.
This is a different
this is a different
FE350S.
bike with blinkers and horns. Got
Yeah.
it.
I
So,
bought another one to go do the tour of Idaho with. So
Okay.
that's whenever I first got it. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go do the Sorks
Did you
race with it. Yeah,
hair
with
scramble
the
on it?
stock suspension.
Yeah. So
Bad idea.
you didn't get a good start, and it's this down like this just barely downhill. But on the right hand side of the trail, it's as smooth as this floor.
Yeah,
On the left hand side is like it's a Jeep trail,
and everybody was in.
yeah, well, and everybody's on the right hand side except for this guy. And
I just remember there was two lines, and one of them was
no, it wasn't aligned. That's
Oh.
why you were the only guy in it because
Oh,
it wasn't
okay.
really aligned.
It seemed like lines.
So I'm in, I'm up towards the anyway, I got a better start than you did, but then I hear horn coming from behind me on my left side, and you're like full send down this hill through these rain ruts on the left, somewhere where you should never have
Probably.
been anyway. And I'm watching there's a 90 left at the bottom of the hill, like stop the motorcycle, get off,
Yeah.
pick the back of it up.
Yeah.
turn it. It was that sharp. And I was like, I'm like seeing blinkers just like bounce. they're hitting the tire, and then they're hitting the seat and hitting the tire, and the horn's still wide open. And I realized it was you, and I was like, there is no way he's going to make this left hand corner at the bottom of the hill. And somehow you got it woed down, and
It stuck.
yeah,
I remember that.
And then
Then I probably crashed 3 turns later.
I think you did, because I passed you again shortly thereafter.
Yeah,
I mean,
probably.
you were on stock suspension,
I probably
expecting a lot out of
crashed.
it.
I was. Dude, I remember coming over right there at the end. They had those rollers or something. And I remember coming over one of those rollers, and I saw Jesus. I saw Jesus. Like I came out of it, and I bottomed that thing out so hard. I was like, I'm dead.
Yeah.
I'm dying.
Yeah. And I'll never forget first hearing the horn and thinking, who is that idiot? And then
It's me.
I know that idiot comes by, and blinkers, touching themselves on every
Yep.
time. Yeah. So
Skip
Yeah,
this
it's
For
pretty
Matt coming by me at Highland Park on one of the Altas, and you just hear clack, 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 clack.
Oh, the
Yeah.
chain slapping.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
so that's when me and you first met, was when you were repping for Alta, and you
Yeah.
brought it by the old shop.
I did bring it by the old shop, and you guys rode it around.
Yeah, we kind of
Je-
had that
I don't even think
air
Jeff
scrubber
rode it.
course.
I wasn't here. You came by
I know.
by Griffith Cycle
Yeah.
too, and I rode it there.
Did you? Oh, you did ride it.
Yeah,
Yeah. Man,
he was playing us off each other.
I just, the funny thing is we were just looking for we were just looking for people that would ride it and believe in it,
Right.
And I mean, the product did really good. I think arguably in my mind, it was what has set up. It was the first competitive electric dirt bike.
It was
In my
it was
mind.
really good.
I think it was just ahead of its time.
it was.
It's
Yeah,
like
I
anything.
agree.
It's like it's got to be the right time at the right price at the right
And it-
customer.
and it
That was a
doesn't-
victim of COVID. Like it was a victim. It ended before COVID, but it was a victim of Harley Davidson.
It was
kind of like
it was a victim of
nixing the
the
project.
board, the board of investors, the boring advisors, whatever you want to
the
call
boring
them.
advisors. They advise you to be boring.
Yeah, they it was just a victim of that. Just some and scalability, I think,
Yeah.
is really one of the things. I raced at some of the Sorks races on it. I could never finish a race because it didn't have enough gas in the tank but the 3 laps that I would do would be the most fun laps that I would ever do, they were it was a fun bike to race. And I actually raced with one of the dealers that we had, Max Motorsports. They did a lot of the SECA. What do they call? Do they call that SECA? Sika?
Citra?
Sika.
Sika?
It's like Southeastern Cross Country something, but they do a 2-moto format. So you have like an hour or
enough time to
something, and you
charge
have
it
it.
in
Yeah, so you
between?
had enough time to
Yeah.
charge it in between, and that was it. That was really cool. Like I think if the new stuff with Stark and maybe their faster charging, like maybe it would work out a little bit better.
That have y'all had a chance to like look and ride maybe like the Husqvarna Pioneer or
I did. I got to ride that at Babes in the Dirt.
Yeah, what's it like? Is it competitive with like a 500 or is it more like a 250? Like,
It's interesting that you asked that. So number one, out in the desert, it's such a different feel, and the suspension
yeah.
was pretty soft. So I didn't really get too aggressive with it because of the big whoops that I was on out there. It felt pretty squishy.
hmm
Um, it's also set up, and I don't know all the tech specs. It's been a minute since
Yeah.
I had to learn all the tech and spec of the different motorcycles, but it's a smaller chassis.
hmm
So, comparatively speaking, the weight distribution is a little bit lower. It was fun to ride. It felt super nimble. Like any electric, anything, the torque right off the rip was pretty good.
Yeah.
I do love the fact that you can get a license plate on it now, though.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So I don't think it's fair to compare it to a 500. I think it's going to serve a different purpose.
I think it's a +1. Like you have
Right.
this bike in your garage and then you add that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fun. Like just like e-bikes, they're fun and they have a place, and ripping them on the trails is an awesome experience.
Mm-hmm.
We went and like one of the Caselli ride days, it was the previous generation free ride.
Yep.
And we rode the trails and helped clean the stuff up. And
They're fun.
they're so fun just to like ride, stop. If you need to lay it over, you just lay it over. Like it doesn't fit every bill, but I think it does a lot, and there's a lot you can do with it, especially if you have a little bit of property or something and you just want to make some trails, or you have something behind your house that it reminds me of being a kid again, like a kid, whenever you're like used to play in those weird areas in between neighborhoods where they have creeks and stuff. Like it's
just new.
That would be perfect for it. Something like that, where you're just like riding around.
But I like you're talking about what didn't work for Alta. Obviously, you're trying to get into a dealer, and it's hard to get a lot of buy-in because you're asking for someone to stock something that's more expensive than a typical dirt bike in the same category. And I think that KTM, who's far into GasGas, the PR Mobility Group, has gone about it the right way by starting with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And starting with like we have the 2, 3, and 5, pick your color. I've got a 3 for my son, the MC E3, and I've got it sitting in my office right now. Like it's kind of cool. Like I got it here by throwing it in the back of my wife's Ford Flex.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's you don't have to worry about it being upright. You don't have to tell her to don't only grab the bike, but grab the spark plugs, the gas, and all this other stuff to go with it. So I think that that's the better angle to come at it from a manufacturer's standpoint, because you're not charging $15,000 for a bike that's untested. You have the ability to kind of grow with the bike.
Yeah. And our daughter had a SXE5.
Yeah.
And she went from a Stasic to an SXE5 to a 65.
Yep.
But with the 65, we put a Recluse clutch in it to help her out. And it, that was a good transition. Like she, it got her into motorcycles.
Are they still running the Z-Start Pro on the Recluse on the 65, or is it the
No,
new
it's
EXP?
whatever the new, they haven't made the Z-Start for a while.
I knew they hadn't, but they kept that Z-Start around for a long time on the 65 specifically, because there was a lot of people who, that's a good transition point for a lot of people. Now it's going to be the transition point because you have the electrics up to that point.
Yeah.
And KTM at the meeting in 2022 said that they wanted to have a bike from the ages, all the way up to 12. I couldn't think about the beginning age. I think they said 4, but all the way up to 12 years old. So that has me at the back of my mind expecting a 65 version of an electric.
If they had an 85 version of it, I would already bought it. I mean, because.
And that free ride is so close because it's on 85 suspension. It's almost 85 size.
It was just a little bit lower. It's a little tall. It's a little tall right now. But like our daughter loved it. She loved. To your point, if they would have had a 65 version, we probably would have just rolled her into a 65 electric, then an 85. Because from a standpoint of like the noise, I think once she got on the 2-stroke, it was the noise thing was a little different. The vibration was a little different. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we rode the SXE in the desert. We did trails with it. We did all sorts of stuff. And it worked motocross track. It worked as a general thing, bike and ownership, and the gateway into it. I could see any parent having that for their kid because it's so easy to own.
Yeah.
It's just really easy to, here you go. And the adjustable height that they did on the frames and everything. I mean, you can,
I tell you, if I had tried to get my son on like a 50 junior like they used to have, he probably wouldn't have touched it.
Yeah.
This kid's skittish.
Yeah.
So I actually had him out at we went riding last Thursday and up at Alan's place, and he started going down a hill, totally forgot he had brakes. Remembered he had a throttle. So that was the
Lean into
first
it.
time I
Do
really
that
had
a
a
lot.
freak out moment with him. Like he gets off the bike. Well, he's under the bike, sorry. And he his foot is turned backward. So I'm
Oh.
like, oh, he's broken his leg. So I get him up and I take the bike off of him and I set him upright, and he's standing there with his foot backwards. And so I turn it around and I'm like, dude, you're fine. Like, what are you doing to me?
Seeing if you're paying attention.
But yeah, make sure your kid's wearing the proper gear. But anyway,
Yeah, I mean, I think the electric stuff is going to be important in the future, but for now, the maintenance aspect of it is really nice, isn't it?
That's the biggest thing. I mean, it doesn't fit every use case, you know, I mean, but the maintenance, like the ease of ownership. And that was the big thing with the Altas too. And even, you know, the KTMs, the Huskies, any of the ones, pick what color you want that's electric. It's the ease of ownership. It's just the air filter. You don't have to do anything but tighten the chain.
yep.
And as a dealer, like I'm not super excited about it because it, you know, it kills the service department. But yeah, I mean, from
These little
consumer,
bikes aren't our bread and butter anyway.
but look in 5 years or 10 years down the road, they will be, because that's the direction that it's going. There will be a 65 and then 85 and then a.
Where do we see the use case for those? Like, I mean, are they, for me, looking at it like racing wise, right? Like, I guess that's the lens in which we look to a lot of things. So are they going to make a class for them? Or are they going to lower the laps? Or are they going to, because I think right now, if you had an electric bike and a gas bike, like they're competitive. The electric has the advantage in some areas, but then longevity wise, range wise, right? I mean, the gas is going to win.
Well,
I mean,
right
the gas
now
can go
with
out and do
the
a 30+2
5,
moto, but you can't do a 32+ moto.
You can do that on the new 5. And that was the
with the
point of
water
making
cooled.
it water cooled, was get the longevity out of the battery so that you could do that. And the charge time between motos, depending on if you're doing it the same day or afterward, they're trying to get that down as well. I think that the machine advances to be able to compete rather than waiting for the class to change to accommodate.
Well, didn't they have some accommodations early on with some of them? Didn't they lower some laps and stuff like that?
For like the E3s and the 5s.
Yeah.
But there's been a little bit of drama with the AMA in regards to all that, because they didn't want the gassers racing with the electrics because they're afraid of a fire and all kinds of stuff. Like, that is the worst argument, I know. But yeah, there was some drama.
But we're seeing it, like at the hair scrambles, they're running the kids. They can't run it on like high. They can't run it in 6. But they're running in 3 and 4. And even there's, moto dads are, right. They're putting these auxiliary battery packs in line.
Oh no.
Oh, wow.
So that they can run them like in 5 and 6 and get a full race out of them. But
ingenuity.
with the kids at a Sorks race, that's a mile and a half lap. And there's parents everywhere. So if the battery dies, there's somebody there to help them. So it's obviously you want your kid to finish. You don't want the battery to die, but if it does, it's not a big deal. Now, if the battery dies, 10 miles from the truck, on a trail ride,
it's kind of a big deal.
That's a problem.
Well, that's the Perry Mountain. That's who our 5th rider was Todd on the Alta.
On the Alta.
Yeah. The flux capacitor. What was it? 4 pistons and a flux capacitor. Was that her name?
Yeah, that was the team name.
And you see a lot of things happening. Like I know Zero had like the interchangeable batteries.
Yeah.
And they ran a 24-hour. So you see a lot of that. And then on the 5s, you have a battery. You have 4 bolts to change out, and it's not that difficult to change out.
For sure.
Anyway, we need to wrap this up. We're getting over our time a little bit. But any last minute things to say?
We'll just have to do it again and talk about all the stuff we didn't talk about.
Yeah, we missed some. I don't know if we missed anything. We covered a lot of topics, but we could keep going on.
Yeah.
I think my closing remark is you guys do such a good job in the community and hosting events and getting people on bikes. And I appreciate just who you are in the Southeast, and glad to be closer to y'all.
Thank you. We're glad y'all are here. Yeah.
Well, Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel on YouTube. We got it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, but wherever you listen to it. Also, if you have anything to say, put it in the comments section below. Give us your snide remarks, your questions, all of that. We want to hear it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.